Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Xaereth Prevails, an alternate accounts story. Alright, this is the final 3 matches for my Grand Arena Championships for my alt account, and we're really going to go kind of quick through all of this because the new championships is already started, and I've actually even made my attacks for both of my first round opponents, and so we're just going to do a quick and dirty. I'm not necessarily going to be adding a lot of extra video clips or anything like that, like you may or may not have become accustomed to, so let's just jump right in. For my first match, my opponent was actually kind of a threat on paper, at least. They had a Darth Revan squad. I think they had a Jedi Revan squad. They had all kinds of really pretty decent squads, but for whatever reason, they just did not deploy defenses at all. And so this is all just a random hodgepodge, and I didn't really have the right teams to be able to take these guys out. I was pretty sure that my opponent wouldn't be able to crack through my defenses, but I wasn't going to be able to get a full clear. And so I'm going to kind of fast forward here through all of my attacks just because they're not that interesting. I should also note that at this stage I was still under the impression that I was going to delete my alt account after this, or not delete it, but kind of just let it go, maybe have it be a ticket slave or whatever, and so I wasn't really going to put in a huge amount of effort. Like, I was going to try to win and everything, but I didn't want to spend a really long time trying to theory craft like which squads I should use, which guys I should take, and so I knew I was going to win this match. My opponent wouldn't be able to beat any of my squads most likely, and so my goal here was just to make sure that I got the win and I could move on. So I wasn't doing any of my feats, I wasn't doing any of that at all at this point, and so my point total at the end, and I won't spoil what the ending is, but my point total at the end is not super impressive. So I did manage to get the win here. I wanted to use General Grievous against their squad with Malak, and even though Malak was the lead, which means they didn't really have a leadership bonus, it was still probably the hardest team, because if you can't get through Malak, like, there's a lot of squads that just can't even kill that one character. He's so strong. In General Grievous, I knew he was capable of doing that. He's got some really crazy offense, and so I took him, and I wasn't planning on full clearing anyways, just because my opponent didn't really have much in the way of offense. Like I've said before, like, I wasn't going to most likely full clear anyways, so I may as well just use all my best teams here. And so I'm taking out all these characters, I'm taking out all these teams. I don't necessarily have a lot of incentive to use any of my weaker teams, and I will say one thing about this, when people don't actually deploy defenses, it can be really frustrating, because even though there's not really any synergy there, like, all of these characters are strong in their own right in a lot of ways, and so even though a good synergy squad is probably going to be able to take a lot of these down, like, trying to take down a squad with Darth Revan and Jedi Revan can be really frustrating. It's really tough, especially when a couple of those other characters from those teams end up in there, so you do have a little bit of synergy. Like, my opponent in this case has HK-47 and Badstilla and Darth Revan lead. Like, that's a legitimately strong team, and there was a pretty great chance that I would actually fail against that with any of my teams, especially because Jedi Revan was filling in this squad as well. And I think that if there's one thing we can take away from this particular match, it's just being able to identify when you're going to have to just cut your losses. And, getting a full clear is great, and that's always my goal in any of my matches, because you want to get as many banners as you can. But if you can't do that, if that's not going to happen, as long as you get the win, that is by far the most important aspect to any of this. Getting the win, getting those bonus banners for the win are way more important than, insisting on trying to full clear and then eventually you stumble and fall. Maybe my opponent wouldn't have been able to actually beat me even if I had only cleared one of these squads, but at the end of the day, The goal is to maximize your banners, and so I wasn't going to be able to crack that Darth Revan squad. I just wasn't, and I don't think that it would have been wise to try to risk any of my good squads to be able to do that. Instead, I recognized that that squad was probably impassable, and focused on the other squads that were much more beatable, and I got first time wins, and I did maximize my banners. So at this point, I think last season I was already in Kyber, but as you can see, I was kind of just messing around. I didn't try for any of the feats. I think there was one that, like a PvP feat in arena, like win 18 matches or something in the arena, and I had the attacks, and I looked at my screen for a little bit, and I just decided not to, because, like I said, I thought I was just going to be done after this. So, anyways, my next match was a lot more interesting. My opponent did deploy defenses, which is always an upgrade from whatever opponent I had before. Even though my opponent before actually had the strongest roster out of any of them, this opponent actually tried, which is always awesome. And I thought it was really amusing. They put Jawas here right next to Geonosians, and Jawas are actually a really great counter for Geonosians. So I don't know if they were trying to make a statement, or, actually Jawas are a decent defensive squad, and I guess I didn't really realize that until this match. Now, the Jawa team is a pretty interesting one just because they don't have much in the way of an overt offense. Like, they don't do much damage on their own, but every time you're hitting them, your entire squad is just getting loaded up with thermal detonators. And so you see, Asajj just hit and she got thermal detonator, and Daka just hit and she got more thermal detonators, and you can't dispel these things, and you just have to hope that you can take out all these Jawas before all of these thermals take you out. And so you see a couple of my Night Sisters actually died. Zombie was able to revive them, and my guys are actually pretty close to the brink here. I didn't bother to read all of the Jawa kits, and I probably should have, just so I could be able to tell which ones I should take out first. You can see Daka was on the very brink of death there, and she wouldn't have been able to be revived. Asajj was dead, and then Daka revived her, and then Daka got taken out. And 52 banners, and I had higher gear than them, and I had a revive mechanic. I think if I had taken almost any other team, I probably would have gotten taken out. And so I'm actually looking into trying to build that squad on my main account as a defensive team, as like a surprise mechanic thing. Just, like, if you can't kill all my Jawas before you get all these thermals on you, then good luck trying to survive, or at least good luck trying to avoid me taking all your banners off as a bonus. So something I'm looking into. I don't know how viable it truly is. So it seems like the fad in Division 6 is for everyone to build really low geared Geonosian squads. And I decided I didn't want to waste my Commander Luke team on this squad, and I didn't want to waste my General Grievous squad on this either, because I didn't really know what was in the back zones. I wanted to be able to take it out, and I would have used one of those squads, because of course you want to be able to clear the squad, but this squad wasn't very high gear at all. They didn't have high stars. There wasn't much going for the squad, frankly. And so I decided to use my Bastila Jedi hodgepodge team, which, Jedi Revan does a pretty convincing job of being able to take out Geonosians as long as you have enough offense. And in this case, clearly I did have enough offense, and really that's the case about all Geonosians. Like, if you have enough hitting power, then you're probably going to win. If you don't, you're going to come up short, and it's going to look like you almost won when you look at the squad at the end, because all their health is down. But in reality, you didn't even come close, and so you need a squad that can punch hard enough, and in this case, Jedi Revan Hodgepodge was just fine. The back zone had another squad leader that I'd never faced. Savage Opress was the leader for that squad, and they actually had a decent amount of gear. And so, I wanted to make sure that I used the right counter on this Phoenix team, they actually had 3 Zetas on them. And, 3 Zetas on Phoenix, it's still not like a super strong squad, but it's strong enough that you kind of don't want to mess around with it. Like, you don't want to send in a really weak squad, and really the only other weak squad that I had left was my own Phoenix, and Phoenix suffer in the mirror match if they don't have comparable gear, which I did not. I didn't have the comparable Zetas, and so I decided I needed to take Commander Luke. Now, I easily could have taken an undersized squad against these guys and been able to win. I expected to be able to win, but I just decided that because I was nowhere near getting the undersized bonus, that I would just take the full squad. And as I said, I was a little bit just I don't know, being lazy, I guess, is probably the easiest way to put it. I didn't really want to have to deal with figuring out the undersized squad, and Commander Luke will beat Phoenix every day. Like, I could have put that on auto and it would have been over almost as quickly. So this final squad here in the back, Talia lead is interesting, and that's me being kind, because it's not interesting. It's awful. Savage lead was I don't know. I didn't really care. I think that maybe putting Darth Maul as the lead was probably going to be better, even though he didn't have the Zeta on Maul and he did have a Zeta on Savage. Maul at least boosts a lot of these guys a little bit. He would have boosted the Vader and Savage at the very least, and given him a little more speed and everything. That wasn't going to save him here. I had General Grievous left, and I also had my Phoenix would have been a much trickier proposition to be able to beat this team, but General Grievous was never going to lose this fight. Again, this is probably another good candidate for getting an undersized win, and I just didn't care. I wanted to take the full squad because this is my arena squad currently. And 54 banners. General Grievous doesn't really like banners. He's not efficient on them, but got the win here. And so the final squad here was Talia. We have Phoenix left, and Phoenix is more than up to beating this random hodgepodge stuff. My opponent didn't really take they must have taken a lot of good offensive teams, even though you can't really tell by how they did on offense. But again, I probably could have undersized this one, though this was a lot more questionable for being able to do that. You can see here for my tactics, I threw the grenades with Sabine, which she does have a Zeta on her for that. But once you throw the grenades, everyone is staggered, and staggered is a great opportunity to be able to get a lot of extra turns, just because once someone's staggered, you can as long as you can tag all the other people who are staggered, they're going to have all their turn meter reduced to 0, and you're going to be able to get a lot more turns just by virtue of them not taking turns, their turn meters being reduced. And so being able to do that is not, or it's one of the strengths of Phoenix. The only problem I have with it is you get this AoE stagger, and then you have to go and individually hit each of the characters because you don't have another AoE available. So, hopefully one day we'll get like Old Man Rex or something for Phoenix, and he will give us some kind of an AoE. He'll call his big walker thing up to shoot, and we'll all be excited about that. But 59 banners here, and then we have this epic Kyber, and that's always the goal. You want to get into Kyber, and so I'd gotten that. At the end of this, I think at this point I probably could have just deployed defenses and been done, and eventually I would have gotten into Kyber, but what's the fun in that? You want to attack, and it's more interesting to be able to do that. So I got another full clear. My opponent was only able to break in through one of my teams, and the Semper Palpatine team has been ridiculously strong for me since the very start. You throw Zeta on his lead, and the squad is really good, so people can't beat it, period. And then you put Badstilla in there, and the taunt from Kylo, it's kind of annoying. So then they attacked my Padme team with Nest and couldn't beat that. They couldn't break through my bounty hunters, and then they couldn't even see. Well, I think they could see Ewoks, and they decided not to try, which is probably wise because that's a headache in and of itself, especially because my Ewoks are relatively fast on my alt account. And yeah, they never even got to see my Kira squad in the back. And so another win. I was in Kyber. I didn't have a whole lot of reason to play. You can see that I'm kind of losing ground on my rank because everyone else is accomplishing their feats, and I am just kind of coasting at this point. And my final match, though, was actually pretty interesting just because my opponent was able to go in and, they were already in Kyber as well. They had a lower rank than me, which is great. They had rank 69 in Fleet, which is also great. And when I logged in, it was only a couple hours in, but they had full cleared me, and I don't think my alt account has ever been full cleared except for like one of the very earliest matches that I ended up losing. So my opponent had a Hera Phoenix team, not nearly as geared or Zetaed as they might have been, and then Ewoks, they had a bunch of gear 12. Like, they had a stronger Ewok team on the surface than I did, and then a really strong Bounty Hunters team. And I'm going to show you all of my defenses first, just to show you guys, like, give you a snapshot of what I was facing. So they had one shot my Emperor Palpatine team, they had one shot my Gear 12 Bounty Hunters team, and then they took 3 battles to finally beat my Padme team with Nest. And then they one shot my Ewoks, which surprised me. Like, most people don't have enough firepower to be able to take out Ewoks after they took out all those other ones. And then they took out my Kira squad, which really surprised me because after taking out all those other kind of high-ish end squads for my GP level, it was pretty impressive. Like, that it's hard to be able to take out that squad because of how resilient it is. And so, I'll have a lot of matches where Kira just wins by default because people can't get through all of that protection regen. So once again, I needed to be able to take out each squad with the lowest common denominator. I needed a full clear, and I probably needed to get wins on every try, on the first try each time. And so I took Night Sisters against Phoenix. They're a pretty tried and true counter. Even though Phoenix have a lot of internal healing, and so Plague doesn't really do anything, Night Sisters just do a lot of things that disrupt them. Stuns especially really mess with Phoenix. Even if Hera has her Zeta and she's able to dispel some guys, you really just, they struggle against Night Sisters and stuns. And Night Sisters, really, like, people think of it as a Plague team. You get that debuff on, and it's great, and it is. It's a really powerful tool to be able to use. But I would almost call Night Sisters a stun lock team. Like, it's really fun to use them on offense. I haven't really been using them on offense ever in Grand Arena on my main. I just stick them on defense because they're so strong defensively, and they can't get max banners, which is something I'm really passionate about on my main account. But using them on offense is really good just because, at a low gear level, they're probably not going to be able to defend much against a good player, but they can really do a lot of work against some of these squads that are a little stronger. And not that this Phoenix squad was especially strong, but getting 59 banners here, that means that only one of my characters got hit because they don't have the ability to regenerate their protection at all. And so, I just kind of ran the table there. And my opponent had a Night Sister squad on their own, but no Zetas in the back. So, it was going to maybe be a challenge, but not nearly as bad as if they had a leadership Zeta there. This next zone was going to be tricky because my opponent had some decent mods on their teams, and even though I was probably a little faster on all of them, I wasn't really sure what I could beat both of them with. Like, I had the teams available, but I didn't know which team to save for my opponent's back zone here. And I eventually decided I would take out their Ewoks with my Jedi team, and after looking at all their speeds and everything, I definitely outsped them. Paplu, for the record, is the one that you guys want to speed up. He's sneaky fast just because he gets plus 25 speed to his total. So you look at his speed, and if it's like 20 or 200 speed base, you have to add an extra 50 speed to that, so he's 250 speed. So keep that in mind when you're facing Ewoks. My opponent had not put a lot of speed on Paplu, and I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make. You want as much speed as you can, and if Paplu gets first turn, then whatever team they're facing, like it just gets a lot harder, because then he calls an assist, and that assist gives all of the other Ewoks 20% turn meter, and that's usually enough for all of the Ewoks to be able to go multiple times before the opponent's team goes. And at the higher relic levels, Ewoks can hit really, really hard, or at least relatively hard, and just be able to take out certain squads. They can't take out the high-end meta teams while they're on defense, but they'll surprise you. Like, you always see, people always post screenshots of, like, look at this, I'm embarrassed, like, I lost to Ewoks. Or more common, they're like, look at my Ewok team, I never expect any kind of win, but I won. This one, it's because their opponent made a mistake of feeding turn meter to Ewoks, like letting them get their feet under them. If you do that, Ewoks can be a really challenging team to beat. In this case, I was able to target all the right characters, and it wasn't that much of a challenge, but you always want to target Ewok Elder, just so we're clear on that. If you don't take him out, then he'll just keep reviving all of the Ewoks over and over again, and it becomes this annoying endless loop that you just don't want to have to deal with. Here we have my General Grievous squad against Bounty Hunters, and honestly, looking at this, I'm not sure why I didn't take Commander Luke, because General Grievous counters more teams. Luke counters nearly as many teams. They have a similar number that they can mess with, but I don't know why I didn't take Commander Luke here. He's probably a slightly weaker squad, than General Grievous. The only squad that Commander Luke, well, I can't even think of a team that Commander Luke can counter that General Grievous can't. I'm sure there's something, but maybe like General Skywalker, but my opponent didn't have General Skywalker. None of my opponents in Division 5 or 6 have that. So, Commander Luke would have been a better choice, actually, I think. I really don't know why I decided to take General Grievous, but it is fun to see General Grievous destroy whatever team he's messing with. And, this is no exception. Look at all the turn meter that I'm getting just from all of the various target locks on the characters. And, you do your AoE from B2 and everyone's getting turn meter. And, a lot of people just kind of see Grievous as the one guy who does a lot of damage. And, the Grievous squad is so much more than that. Like, there's just so much strength there. They're a really fun squad on offense. They're just not banners efficient. That's the only reason people don't take them more. People take their Grievous nuke squads. And I actually disagree with that on a fundamental, like, banners efficiency level, but that's beside the point. Like, people don't necessarily take Grievous on offense, not usually. It's a good defensive team. And so we have a Kylo Ren team in the back. We're using Phoenix to be able to counter some of this stuff. And one of the things I thought of was I could use Commander Luke without 3PO. I'd be able to counter these teams without 3PO. And so I tried, I figured I'd throw 3PO in with Phoenix. And that's the first time I've ever done that. This First Order team is not that impressive. I mean, look at how much protection was taken off just by one AoE from Sabine. And, I just wanted to try 3PO with them. And 3PO, the thing that he does well with them is every time they're doing a basic, they do an expose as well. And that can actually be really problematic if you're trying to counter like high-end First Order teams, just because you'll kill the 3 other guys that are accompanying the Kylos, and then you can just time out. Like, you're reducing their turn meter a bunch, especially if you're using Commander Luke. Like, you can absolutely 100% just time out against a Kylo team that's just like stun locked. There's just like one Kylo left, and they're not getting any turns because you're reducing all their turn meter, but they're getting so many exposes that they're actually regenerating all of their hit points and health. But as it stood, I got 57 banners there. It was a fun little trick to be able to make sure that my Phoenix could be able to beat that. And at this point, it looked like it was all over but the crying. I had Commander Luke available. I didn't have 3PO with him, but this Night Sisters team was not going to be super threatening. I decided to take Chopper in there, just as an extra tank. Chopper actually works really well with Commander Luke. Chopper works really well with a lot of squads, and so we're just hanging out here trying to get our first 2 kills off of Night Sisters. I got my initial kill against Night Sister Spirit. Zombie died. She came back. Night Sister Spirit died again. Zombie died again and brought her back. And now Zombie can't do anything else. And there you can see Chopper did his awesome thing. Like, he dispelled. He does a lot of different things. He has a lot of strengths, but that's something that a lot of people overlook, is just how he's just so versatile. Like, he does so many good things. He's not a meta character necessarily. He's not transcendent, but I should actually probably try to incorporate Chopper into my defenses a little bit more on my main account. He just does a lot, and I don't really use my Phoenix squad on that account much anymore anyways. So 58 banners against Night Sisters, that's just fine. My opponent had failed a couple times anyways, and so I didn't really need to play the efficiency game here. I just needed to get a full clear without any fails, and that's what I ended up doing. I ended up getting a win with by 31 points, which is a fantastic finish to this season. I got the win, and that meant that I went 12-0 with my alt account, and I went 12-0 with my main account. So 24-0 for that Grand Arena season. I feel like that's a pretty dominant season, honestly. It's more impressive on my main, in my opinion. There were a lot of fluff teams and a lot of unimpressive things that were going on on my alt Grand Arena, and I don't think I ended up at 170. Like, I took my screenshot and then I was done, and I think I ended up like in the 400 or 500s even. Like, it wasn't very good. It wasn't a very impressive finish for someone who went 12-0, but as I said, I just ignored a ton of my feats, and this account has made Kyber all 3 rounds now, and my main account has also made Kyber all 3 rounds, and hopefully I can keep that streak up. As I said, I'm not quitting. I actually already got my first round in with my alt here, and he's in Division 5 now, and my competition has not necessarily improved. So anyways, I'll show you guys all those matches. There's some more interesting things that are going on that account and everything. My main account had a really tough match on their hands. My opponent had made Kyber last time and was a really strong player. Really, really, really strong roster. Way stronger than mine. The only difference was I had more Zetas because I'd been playing longer. So stay tuned for that, guys. That should be out tomorrow, like the day after this is released. And anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. And remember that in all things, Xaereth prevails.